Hi, and welcome to Caterpillar Cross Stitch. My name is Ford, and this is my supervisor, Nugget the Parakeet, and this week we're going to teach you some tricks for how to make sure that you don't get stuck with low-quality Aida that could ruin your project. Nugget has reminded me that I will get kicked off YouTube if I don't remind you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave me a comment. That's how YouTube tracks our performance. It doesn't really cost you anything other than a few seconds of time, but it makes a big difference for me, so I'd appreciate it if you take a moment to do that. Now, the most commonly used fabric for cross-stitching is Aida, but not all Aida is created equal, and if you don't have the experience, it's really hard to tell which ones are going to be good and which ones are going to be not so good. So I'm going to give you some tips for evaluating a piece of fabric of unknown quality or unknown provenance and see if it's going to be a problem for you. Personally, one thing that I frequently look for first is to check if the fabric is really stiff. Low quality fabric will often kind of hide that fact by using a lot of starch. So if your fabric is really stiff, if you can fan yourself with a piece of it, that's probably a sign that the quality is not very good, and you want to take a close look at the other things. Part of the reason that I use this piece of fabric for my demos here on the channel is because, one, it's 11 count, so it's larger than the fabric that I would normally use for a project, and two, it's so stiff that I can barely stand to touch it. I wouldn't really want to use it for a project. So that's one of the reasons I use this one as a demo, and that stiffness is one of the signs that tipped me off that I probably wasn't going to enjoy it. Nugget hates it so much they're out of here. Another problem that you can have with cheaper or low quality fabric is to have a really loose weave. So if we take a look at this piece that I just bought at my local craft store, you can see how large the holes are in that fabric compared to a comparable piece of fabric from a quality manufacturer. They make those holes a little bit bigger. It's a little bit easier to see them, and so they'll be good for beginners or for people with vision problems, but for a more advanced crafter, that's going to create a quality problem in your stitch because a hole in the fabric is a space between your stitches. So your stitches won't be quite butted up against each other. Your project will be kind of translucent when you're done. Now, another problem that I have had with lower quality fabrics in the past that has created a big problem in one of my projects is when the weave of the fabric is not truly square. It should be an even weave. Aida is an even weave fabric. That means that the number of threads horizontally is the same as the number of threads vertically. So you can check that just by counting. But that can be a little bit difficult to do because it's kind of small. So one of the things that I like to use is my calipers that I mentioned in a previous video. So what I'll do is I will open up my calipers and I will set them to inches because the count of Aida should be how many weave per inch. So easiest thing to check that is to turn on my calipers and set them to 1 inch. Now my calipers go way more precise than I really need for this, but if I can get within 1/1000th of an inch, that's probably close enough, right? Yeah, all right. So that's 1 inch plus 10/10,000ths of an inch. I have another piece of fabric here that I just bought at the craft store that is supposedly 18 count. That means 18 stitches per inch when you stitch on it. So we'll go ahead and open that up and spread a little bit of it out here on my work table. So what I'll do is I'll just put one of the prongs of my calipers in a hole of that fabric and count along that row. I'm getting about 17.75 because it's not quite a full 18 stitches there in that 1 inch measurement. Now I want to measure in the other direction because I need to make sure that this is square. So I'm going to do the same thing. I want to take just a second right now to remind you to join the Caterpillar Cross Stitch Stitch Club email. You'll get advance notice of any upcoming projects, stitch-alongs, retreats that Caterpillar might be coming out with. Plus, you'll get an ebook with 9 free PDF cross-stitch patterns in it, including a year-long tracker pattern. You can use it as a temperature tracker, mood tracker, chore chart, whatever you like. Make sure you hit the link down there in the description to get all of that great stuff. I'm getting almost exactly 19 in that direction. So that's a difference of about 1.25 stitches per inch. What should be 18 stitches per inch is about 17 3/4 stitches one way and about 19 stitches the other direction. So that's a difference of about 1.25 stitches per inch. Now, as a function of the overall weave of the fabric, on most projects, that probably wouldn't matter too much. It's about a 7% variance. But if you're stitching something that's, say, circular and about 100 stitches across, that's going to work out to be a difference of almost half of an inch in a 100 stitch wide project. So it'll be about 5.6 inches one way and about 5.25 inches the other way. So that's going to make a difference of almost half an inch. And personally, that's a significant enough difference for something that should be square or that should be round that I will be able to see that difference in the finished project. If you don't have a lot of symmetry, or if you don't have a circular or square main figure in your stitch, you probably wouldn't notice. So that might be an opportunity to save a little bit of money on a fabric if it's otherwise acceptable to you. But for me, in certain circumstances, that could be enough to ruin a project. Now, I cannot overstate the importance of having a supportive and knowledgeable community, like the Caterpillar cross-stitch community. There's an amazing group of people that have surrounded the brand, and they can be found in the Facebook group, as well as in the following of the Caterpillar cross-stitch Instagram. So make sure you check both of those out, because there's a lot of great resources available to you, and if you're not in those spaces, you're missing out. But what if you're at the craft store or the needlework store and you don't have a pair of calipers with you? Which, that would be weird. Why wouldn't you have your calipers with you? But, yeah, I get it. It's okay. So I have a little technique that I use to help me eyeball the square of the fabric. Because looking at one square, it's a little hard to tell whether or not it's square, because a little bit of variation in the fabric or the lighting can make that difficult to tell. So what I will do is I will kind of count off an area of 3 by 3, and I will kind of cordon that off in my brain, that 3 by 3 stitch area. Now, because it's 3 by 3, that should be square. But I've found that even if it's only about a 2 or 3% variance in the warp or the weft of the fabric, with a 3 by 3 or a 4 by 4 area of the grid of the fabric, I can see that difference even without having to measure it. So that's a little trick that I use when I'm in the store to make sure that I don't have that problem again. Now, another problem that you can have with the quality of the fabric that's a little bit harder to detect is fabric that is not color fast. So anything besides white or oatmeal fabric will have been treated with a dye at some point. And if that dye hasn't been properly set into the fabric, it can come back out, and especially onto your hands, onto your stitching. It can bleed into the fabric when you wash it. This is a little bit harder to know if it's going to be a problem because you can't really test it in the store. But I have a few things that I use in order to avoid that problem. And one is just to get the fabric a little bit wet and let it sit for a few minutes, and then dab it with a white paper towel. If any of the dye that's in the fabric is going to bleed out, you'll be able to see it in the paper towel that it would have bled into. One thing that you can also look for is to look for printed or dye sublimation printed fabric. You'll see these from Charles Craft and other companies in your local craft store. The dye sublimation ink is not actually technically an ink, it's a pigment. So it sits on the surface and it doesn't have a liquid state. Sublimation means it goes directly from a solid to a gas, and then it recongeals as a solid on the surface of the fabric, so it can't be dissolved by water. So if it's printed or dye sublimation printed, then you don't have to worry about the bleeding, so that's a nice reason to look for those. It's available in all sorts of different colors and patterns that you can't really get from hand dyeing. And of course, once you have some experience, you're going to become familiar with particular manufacturers or particular fabric dyers that you know are quality and that you don't even have to worry about it. Charles Craft, which is a division of DMC, reliably has very good quality fabrics. Almost all of the Caterpillar kits, I believe, have Zweigart, or maybe all of the Caterpillar kits have Zweigart in them. And Zweigart is really good high quality fabric. It's also really easy to recognize because it has this trademark orange thread in the selvage. So that makes it really easy to spot. If you see that, you can usually guess that that's going to be good quality fabric, even if it's been re-dyed by someone. But if it has been re-dyed, you'll want to double check that the dye does not bleed. And then eventually you'll probably become familiar with some fabric dyers if you like to use dyed fabric and know that they do a really good job of setting the dye in their project. And so then you'll just know that that's a quality dyer and you won't have to worry about color fastness. So those are some of the tricks that I use to make sure that I don't get stuck with a low quality fabric that's going to ruin my project. What about you? Is there something in particular that you look for, or something that that I didn't cover as a potential problem with the fabric? Leave it in the comments down below, and maybe you can help somebody else from having a problem in the future. Other than that, Nugget and I do want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. For Caterpillar Cross Stitch, my name is Ford, and I will see you next time.